overcome the feelings he had of frustration and emptiness which he felt were in his life.
Now completely isolated, Dahmer gave in to his fantasies.
He saw a man jogging by the house whom he thought was attractive to him, and he had the idea that he could hide in the bushes with an instrument, could club that man on the back of the neck, and could pull him into the bushes and have his way with the unconscious man. And so he did go out with a baseball bat that he'd cut down to size, hid in the bushes and waited for the jogger to pass, but the man didn't return.
Another victim was not far away. Only 3 weeks after Jeffrey Dahmer's prom date, he committed his first murder.
Dahmer expressed a willingness to answer questions regarding the death of Stephen M. Hicks. He looked at the photograph of Hicks and stated, "It's been a long time. That could be him. That looks like the guy. You remember your first one." In the early evening, around 9 p.m., I was driving down the Cleveland-Massillon Road towards the mall area when I saw a guy about 18 years old near the fire department hitchhiking.
Pulled over, offered him a ride, wanted to know where he was going. Mr. Hicks indicated he was going to a concert out at Chippewa Lake. They made a turn, reversed their direction, went back up Bath Road, took Mr. Hicks back to his residence. Mr. Hicks wanted to leave. Mr. Dahmer didn't want him to leave, although he realized that Mr. Hicks was not a homosexual, had no homosexual tendencies, but felt that he wanted that companionship, just wanted somebody there.
I didn't want him to leave. That's basically it. I just didn't want him to leave. That's where this whole nightmare started.
He decided that he was not going to let Mr. Hicks leave. He got the barbell, struck him on the head. He decided at that time to fulfill what he thought was a fantasy, or he fantasized on, and that was kill him. He then strangled the male from the back with the same pipe. Jeffrey L. Dahmer then stated, "I panicked and took him under the part of the house by the crawl space."
This is where some of his illness now really does indeed begin to take over. Again, it's tragic in terms of the victims' families, but Mr. Dahmer at this point is now beginning to relate intimately and sexually to this body that he has with him. He does this on more than one occasion.
And so it was then that he had his first real-life experience with trying to dispose of remains and found what a problem it is. He put 3 plastic garbage bags filled with body parts in the back of his car, and after dark, drove out in the car in order to dispose of these.
Because he's frightened, he's riding down the road and he's frightened. He's not driving very carefully, and he's crossing the center line, and a police officer spots him and pulls him over.
I asked him how did he act when the police stopped him, and he stated that he was very nervous, but he tried to act calm. I then asked, did the policeman look in the car, and he stated yes, with the flashlight. And they then asked what were in the bags that were on the rear seat. He informed the police that it was garbage.
The officer gives him a ticket for crossing the center line and then sends him on his way. Clearly, had the officer at that point looked in the bag, history might indeed have been very much different.
He takes some personal effects, a necklace and another personal item that Mr. Hicks had, and he was going to keep those. But then later decides to dispose of them. He goes down to the Cuyahoga River, tosses the items over the bridge. They were never recovered.
Have you ever had a dream where you woke up in the morning thinking you killed somebody, and you wake up and you're in panic? You say, God, I wish this was a dream, and all of a sudden you say, oh my God, it was a dream. He woke up every day hoping that was a dream, and it wasn't a dream.
Mr. Dahmer could not awaken from a nightmare once he had killed Stephen Hicks, because that nightmare, that fantasy that had been in the recesses of his mind, had now become a reality.
The demons that were inside Jeffrey Dahmer had now been turned loose, and for the next few years he would struggle to control them. But as you'll see, he and others would pay a terrible price.
It in a locker so he could be close and have companionship with it. Now that's very, very sick, but to him it felt as though there was something warm and comforting happening, not that he was doing.
He had already committed murder, and he was struggling to control the impulses that had driven him to kill one boy, trying to find his way towards some kind of normal life. So like thousands of other young men his age, Dahmer enrolled at the University of Ohio in Columbus. But he knew what he had done and what he was capable of doing again. And nothing in the world frightened him more.
The last time I saw Jeff was the end of our first semester in college. And I was walking down one of the main streets in Columbus, a very, very busy, well-known street. And I looked over to the side of a building, and there was Jeff laying on the sidewalk. And he was passed out drunk on the sidewalk, leaning up against the building. And I remember I went over to him and said, Jeff, and he sort of came to and saw me, and he looked at me, and he passed out again. And I remember at that moment thinking, he's lost, he's gone.
Dahmer flunked out of Ohio State University after just one semester. His father thought he needed discipline and urged him to try the Army. He trained to become a military policeman, but he wouldn't stop drinking, and he was kicked out of his unit. Dahmer became a medic instead. On July 13th, 1979, Dahmer shipped out to one of the most isolated posts in the Army, Baumholder, Germany.
During my stay in Germany, Jeff was one of my friends. He could make you believe anything. He was intelligent enough that when you spoke to him, even if you disagreed with him totally when you got out, even if you knew that you were right, by the end of the conversation, you'd be agreeing with Jeff. That's just the flair that Jeff had. He could talk you into believing anything. But then there were a lot of times when he'd be withdrawn, quiet to himself. And there was kind of an unwritten rule over there that if someone's quiet and withdrawn, you leave them to themselves. Because usually they're thinking about a problem or thinking about home or something.
Jeffrey stated he feels that the first homicide that happened in Bath, Ohio, was unplanned and somewhat of an accident. He stated that this haunted him terribly for many years and that he had nightmares and was troubled by it during the entire time he was in the service.
Yeah, there was something eating away at him. Definitely eating away at him from the inside, and the way that he got rid of it was by drinking. When Jeff would get drunk, as long as you left him alone, he was fine. But if you antagonized him while he was drunk, then he'd flare up.
He would get to the point happy, you know, and when he was to the point to where he had enough alcohol in him, he would not say another word. He would get quiet, and a matter of fact, he would attack you. He would. What I remember is him chasing me one time, and the thumping of his feet. It was kind of, you know, the barracks where we were at were kind of, you could hear noises real well, and it was just like boom, 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 boom. I ran down the hall into the bathroom and shut the door so he couldn't get in and help my body up against it. The only thing I can remember about it is my heart beating real fast and me hoping that he wasn't going to get in this door, you know. So I come out of the bathroom. He went back to our room. So I come out of the bathroom. I opened the door, and he was laying on the bunk. I walked over to the bunk. And it's like his eyes popped open, and here we go again. Down the hall. I went down the other way this time. So finally, I'd go in. I'd leave the door open. I'd kick his bed to make sure he didn't wake up, you know. And if he'd wake up, I was out of there. You know, I'd go upstairs. And finally, they moved me. They moved me out of the room. And he only did it to me. I can't understand it. He didn't do it to anybody else. Only me.
And then the closer he came to the time that we finally said enough was enough, he started drinking more on the weekday evenings. And then it just got so right at the end he was just drunk 24 hours a day. He'd wake up, grab the bottle, and drink until he passed out.
Dahmer lasted in the Army 2 years, 2 months, and 15 days. Because of his alcohol abuse, he was given a general discharge.
The last day just before he left, I told him that I know that he could have made it in the Army, that the only thing he was proving by getting out was that he was a loser.